We are live, and it's that time. It's time for Geek Speak. And surprise, it wasn't going to be Rena or Pip that's with Greg today. It's going to be me. We're kind of doing a bit of a continuation on us talking about kind of security, but we're doing all the essential plugins that you need for your WordPress setup because there's a lot of them out there and they do a lot of different things. So I think we're going to cover over different aspects and some sort of general ones that are really good for anyone, and then also also specific use cases as well that you can kind of get your head around. But again, just to start, my name is Phelan with Seymour Digital Media.
And I'm Greg with Original 72 Creative. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome,
Yeah,
welcome.
just to go further on your intro there, I've broken out into somewhat categories to go through, just so just so we hit plugins
Mm-hmm.
that we could suggest for sort of each of the different use cases or things that you might want to use certain plugins for. And a lot of the it's what do you use for backups? What do you use for security? What do you use
Yeah.
for e-commerce? What do you use for performance? What do you use for us? Like, and on and on. And we can group things like that and just mention the preferred or best plugins to use for those types of categories.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. And I figure there's going to be like kind of big categories of like, things about site performance and things about security and things about like different, and there's got to be different, or SEO and different things, and there's got to be a bit of bleed over with them. But I figure, yeah, there's going to be categorizations, and then there's got to be some like specialty ones as well, because I wanted to mention something about where I was telling you that Ultimate Members plugin was really good. But before we get to that, where do you want to start?
Um, if we want to get security and backups out of the way, because I know we've talked about that on a previous
Yeah.
live, so we could probably just recap that one quick. Also, because security and backups are probably extremely important for you,
Yeah.
so might
Yeah.
might as well lead off with those.
For sure. For sure. Uh,
um, I was gonna say security and backups. A lot of times you can get like combined plugins that will do both, and some are you can do one that's just security and one that's just backups. The
mm-hmm.
ones I use are separate, and the ones I use are from Solid. So it's for security I use Solid Security, and for backups I use Solid Backups. Um, but there's lots for backups. You have Updraft,
Yeah.
which is very common.
That's
There's
the one I
another one that
use.
you use that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I use
Oh,
Updraft.
it's super common because the free tier of WP or
Updraft.
Updraft is really good.
Yeah, that's the
So
biggest
that's
one.
probably the one most people would typically go with because um, I do security and backups and maintenance as a service. I have pro plugins from
Mm.
Solid that I use, so I prefer those. But yeah, for the most part, Updraft is the probably number one. There's another one I haven't used, but I know is quite popular. It's called WP Vivid. Um,
It rings a bell. I mean, what once
yeah.
I landed on Updraft, I was kind of like, yeah, this says it's really popular. Again, like goes back to where security talk is. Find things that are popular and are well maintained, because
Mhm.
this is not a field that which you need to get really exotic and do really different things. You want it boring and very, you know, well maintained and very popular, so that you don't have any security or backup issues.
Yeah. And there is another one that I haven't used, but I know is been around for a bit called Back WP Up, which I
Uh,
always have a hard time saying because there's the WP up like in the middle of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that is an engineer who was like trying to at the last second get his on the the store and was like, "Oh, why don't I just move these words around?" And then,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
just that's
It won't this be clever?
yeah, it's software engineers are not known for their good naming conventions. Is all I could say. Is that they're generally, yeah, it's not their strong suit.
Another thing I'll mention about the backup solutions that we've mentioned, many of them are also people use them for migrating. Because you can take a backup of the site, they typically do have options like if you're going to move your site from one place to another, or you're switching domains or things like that. They typically, most of the backup plugins also have some type of a migration aspect to them.
Yeah,
Since backups are all about like restoring sites and everything, so that is very common. So if by chance you're looking for that type of functionality because you need to move your site, you can use one of those backup plugins to accomplish the move as well.
yeah, exactly. I've done that as well. It's super easy with most of them. Depending on how insane your setup is, I've had some migrations that were a little too crazy, and I was pulling my hair out. Then I found out it wasn't the plugin; it was just the website of the client was too customized.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so uh, I'd say going on from that, another super common one for most websites is going to be some sort of SEO plugin, right? So it's going to be tapping into your
But we didn't finish our security
oh
portion
oh
of
yeah
backups and security. Let's quickly go through security. The one so backups, the most common, because there's a really good free tier, is Updraft. The what people mostly use for security is WordFence security.
yeah
So you'll often see many sites running Updraft and WordFence together for your backups and security. Um, as I mentioned, used Solid Security, a pro tier of it, and there's also a free tier for all-in-one security.
mm, mm-hmm.
Um, and I lumped this in with security only because it's really for SSL, but honestly, I don't use it and I don't understand why anybody uses it. It's really simple security. I always found this plugin accomplished one thing. So it basically made all of your site and links HTTPS, but I think they've expanded it now.
Yeah, I think
But
there's
I always found it useless.
yeah, that I always found that there's a lot of inbuilt functions now that are in WordPress core that do a lot of what used to be. It was much more common back in the day,
Mhm.
7 or 8 years ago, to have some sort of force SSL type situation. Um, yeah, and so yeah, that's WordFence is what I use as well. It's very, again, boring, very wide, very popular, very well maintained, boring setup, but very practical for keeping maintaining website security. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and so we got the security. So yeah, then I wanted to touch on SEO plugins as well because they're kind of dime a dozen. Uh, in in reality, like you've got your Yoast, you've got your Rank Math, and you've got your all-in-one SEO. Um, they all mostly do interchangeable things between each other, depending on what pro tier you pick for each one. Each one's got their own separate add-ons. So if you're like a local business, they have like different local business add-ons, or like content help you with it with AI or internal linking. One thing to keep in mind that just came up with myself with the client is that when they were submitting their sitemap, they were using
Mhm.
all-in-one SEO and it didn't generate the sitemap correctly. It only showed one page on their sitemap, even though obviously they
Mhm.
had like a blog. I didn't know what it would caused it, but we just replaced it with rank math, and then because they all kind of do pretty much the same thing, it just took over and did it just fine. So not to say it was anything specific to all-in-one SEO. I just was saying that you should check these plugins to make sure that they're doing what you think they should be doing as well. Just don't
Mhm.
accept what they do
Mhm.
blindly, go and double check when you go to submit sitemaps, or if your meta descriptions and page titles getting updated based on what you're putting in there. So just make sure that the plugin's doing what it's supposed to do. But for the most part, they're all pretty straightforward for doing any sort of SEO related work and optimizing your pages.
Agreed.
Yeah. I would say, kind of going off of SEO, one of the other big components of SEO is speeding up your website, making sure it runs fast. So this is just so lay down a marker as well. I found that it really, you should check if your hosting company has their own inbuilt plugin. Because I had one client that had SiteGround, and SiteGround actually built a really good performance plugin for
Yeah.
their WordPress setups. But it only worked if you were using SiteGround hosting. But it did a bunch of really cool JavaScript, like it's called chunking, where you break it all up into chunks, very imaginatively named. And then also they had like minification, but they also had WP web image creation. And so that was definitely one that I found pretty good. So I would definitely, if your hosting company does have their own inbuilt or in-house one, also going off of that, don't add one extra if you don't need to. So if you're doing Flywheel or WP Engine, they are using WP Rocket on the back end. So if you put on something like total W3 total cache, it'll break your website. I found that one out
Mm-hmm.
the hard way. It's because I was trying to speed up the website, and then they told me it's like that. Don't do that. Don't add one because they're already doing it, and it conflicts and it breaks things. So double check.
Yeah, I mean, it's important when you're trying to work on speed and performance and caching that you are very careful, because obviously all hosts might be set up different,
Mm-hmm.
and possibly doing different things. So anything you add to your site that will affect core files, or try to minify things, or even put things together, um, you got to be really careful. And most of the time when people implement these things, it's suggested that you kind of do one feature at a time to see if
Yeah.
it breaks your site, and if it does, like, remove it, and then move on from that to the next kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say pro tip that for anyone who's looking to play around with anything where it affects your caching or how your JavaScript gets loaded, like that's the minification where it squishes it all down. Check everything in an incognito browser after you flush the cache of your hosting. Like flush all the caches that you can. Check it in incognito. That'll tell you very quickly if you've broken something, because you could have a browser running, and I've had this with other clients where they were saying, "Oh no, the issue's still persisting." And I said, "Could you go check on an incognito browser?" And they're, "Oh, it went away." And it was because their browser had held on to a bad version of the website, and so they needed to check an incognito with the cache all flushed out, and then they get a
Hmm.
clean new version of the website. So, yeah, just a pro tip wherein you're pulling your hair out, going like, "I've made the changes. I thought I fixed it. Why isn't it reflecting?" And that's the almost guaranteed is a reason why. So yeah, incognito browsers is very helpful when you're testing these things.
Yeah, cache results in a lot of calls.
Yeah, yeah,
The customer's like, I made a change, but I don't see it, or they ask me to do something and I do it, and then tell them it's done, and then they look and they don't see it, and there's always a call.
yeah, yeah. There's
I don't
usually
see it. It's still broken. No, no, just refresh or clear your cache.
yeah, yeah. It's one of those ones where it's just one of the like, no, you've just got an old version of it, and you kind of have to talk them through how to clear the cache and make sure that they or check incognito, and then they can see, oh yeah, it's working. Oh, awesome. And then yeah, very common. Browsers like to hold on to stuff a lot more these days than ever.
Yeah. Another thing about the cache options, you mentioned W3 total cache, I think, right?
Yep.
Because I think that's probably the one that's been around the longest and probably the most widely used, even though there are a lot that are used quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um, Going off of the fact that sometimes these things might break your site, W3 W3 Total Cache is a caching and optimization plugin that should work on all hosts, barring the fact that your host might be doing something specific. But there are some caching plugins that are specific to servers, and one that's very common is Lightspeed Cache, and Lightspeed Cache will only work for a WordPress site that's hosted on a Lightspeed server.
Yeah.
Um, so I've come across some clients who have had Lightspeed Cache um, set up, and it was really doing nothing because their host was not a Lightspeed host. So
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, and the complete opposite of that one that I was been experimenting with is something called Rapid Load.
mhm.
So it uses like an AI to go through the server stack of whatever hosting company, and then optimize your plugin, like the site speed and minification for the preferences of whatever your hosting company is. And
Mm.
it did a really good job. Honestly, I was pretty impressed. I think it's like $10 a month for doing like an intro.
I've
But
not heard of that one. What is it? I got to look that up.
rapidload.io.
I'm
Uh,
just making a note of it.
yeah, yeah, it's worth experimenting with. Like I had a client whose website was really stubborn, so the W3 total cache wasn't didn't get the gains I was hoping for. So I was looking around and I found this website. Um, there, it had a significant performance. Like we're talking, went from 50 or 60 on mobile to 90 or 80,
Mm.
and just letting it kind of do its thing. And it does a lot of what W3 Total Cache, but just a little bit more as well. And then it's supposedly it's supposed to optimize for if you're on Elementor or Divi, and it's supposed to do those optimizations as well. Like it's supposed to like scan your website, scan your hosting, and then figure out what's the best optimizations thereof. Like how much is that as marketing? I mean, all I could say is I ran it through PageSpeed Insights, which is objective compared to,
Yeah.
uh, and so it did pretty well as far as I was concerned.
Now, one thing I want to mention right now, because I find this category is where I see it most often, is people will have multiple performance and caching plugins
Mm.
installed, which generally it's not a good idea to have multiple plugins installed that do the same thing.
Or
But again, like I
similar.
said, this is typically where I find that happens most. Like people, like if you need an SEO plugin, people usually pick an SEO plugin and they install it. They don't
Yeah,
typically go and install Yoast and Rank Math
yeah,
together, right? But for performance, and because sometimes it's hard to understand what the plugin is doing, and there are plugins that will do certain features, and then there are other performance plugins that have a different feature. So in some cases, it does make a little bit of sense to have
yeah,
two, but I try as much as possible to pick one that does everything performance and caching wise and stick with that. I know a lot of people use W3 Total Cache with auto optimize because
yeah.
W3 Total Cache does the caching and auto optimize does the compression and the optimization of the files and those types of things.
Yeah, I found much similar to what you said that I found a lot of conflicts, mostly because it's no fault of the plugins. It's just that where one ends and the other one begins of what they're doing can sometimes cause conflicts on who's doing what first and how those kind of order of operations that
Yeah.
it's really hard to debug and figure out what's going on. But yeah, I definitely recommend as much as possible to have one plugin do everything, especially anything that's involving compressing files or adding things together, like aggregating everything and then minifying that, like, anything where it's like complicated and it's like moving things around and compressing things. The
If
other
you use
plugins.
one to compress the files and then another to compress the compressed files, doesn't it just even get better?
Yeah, yeah, that's how JavaScript really likes to work. It's just like one compression's good, second compression's even better. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's does not
Double
quite
comp-
work like that. Your browser will be very mad when you try to load that.
yeah.
Um,
Before we move on from the performance and caching stuff, there's one more that I was going to mention, which is something I use on quite a few sites. It's the one called Hummingbird. I find
oh,
it works. Um, it's sort of not as hard to understand as some. There is
yeah,
like an automatic, like it'll just do its thing, um, but you can remove that and get more granular in doing only the specific things that you want. But as a usability for performance and caching, it does quite a good job just installing it and going like just do your automatic stuff. Um, I've rarely seen that many issues with it, although I've heard other people have issues with it. I've not come across that many since I've been using it for at least 3, 4 years, maybe once or twice. I've had a site look odd because it compressed the CSS or a JavaScript file weird. But for the most part, I find it pretty good to boost your performance um, with minimal input.
all right, yeah, that makes sense. I haven't used like that rings a bell hummingbird. I haven't used it in a long, like at least 3 or 4 years minimum.
Hummingbird is the same group that does Hummingbird does.
Isn't it iffy? It's like elegant themes, isn't it?
No, I don't think it's Elegant Themes. I'm trying to think of the image optimization plugin that's very common. Um, I can't remember.
Okay. Yeah, I can't remember it myself. Oh, it's the it's WPMU Dev. Yeah, it's those guys.
Yes. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, they're the ones that have the really common blog for like pretty much any basic thing about WordPress. They probably have a blog post about it. Uh, yeah, that makes sense. I also wanted to touch.
You're right. Yeah. Smush.
Oh,
Smush
Smush.
is
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
image optimization
yeah,
plugin. And again, I didn't even have that one noted, but another category of optimization that is very common. A lot of times people will have some type of image optimization
yeah.
plugin set up. So Smush is one that would work really well for that. So yeah, Hummingbird and Smush are by the same group, and you are right. It's WPMU Dev.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The and Yeah, I use Short Pixel for image compression. I find that it does the
Hmm.
best job with the least amount of loss. So
Hmm.
Short Pixel, and they've got a super generous free tier that if you just log into their website,
Hmm.
the plugin I think it eats up your credits pretty quickly, so they'll definitely push you to be pro. And it does automate a fair bit of it, but I find that Short Pixel's the best one I've used. You know, that's kind of uh, you again. You want to use something boring and very common for those. Uh,
Yeah, for sure. I think those two, Smush and Short Pixel, are probably the two most
huh.
common,
Yeah,
most
they're
widely used.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Like, I
Yeah.
think there's another one that's from Automatic, like the WordPress core people that comes to mind, but I don't use it. Mostly because I try to avoid anything that goes down the WordPress.com route. I try to avoid like the plague.
Um, Yeah, I think the one that I might be thinking of is like a weird. It's like ew, image optimizer. It was like EWWW image
Oh
optimizer or
yeah, that
something.
that rings a bell. Like yeah,
I think I always forget about that one because it's a weird name.
yeah, yeah. I need to be weird to tell your clients that it's like, oh yeah, we're putting on ew image compression. It's like it doesn't really fill them with confidence.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so I think there's a couple other that I wanted to shout out of plugins that I've just used recently that I was telling you about was the so Ultimate Member site was really good. So if you have some sort of functionality where you need people to be registered users and only see specific pages,
Hmm.
if they're logged in, really versatile tool. I use that with Elementor and Jet Engine, so we could dynamically show people like if you're assigned this role, you can see these forms, and if you're assigned this role, you get to actually see everything. And so it was a way that we could make it so that like people could sign in, and if they're assigned to see certain things, then it's super easy to dynamically kind of you only get to see this thing, or you can see everything.
And which plugin was that you used and then
So
customized?
it's Ultimate Member. So that does
Yeah.
all your roles. So you can have specific roles. And then Elementor working with Jet Engine. So Elementor does like kind of the drag and drop, but it has a feature called Jet Engine that does a lot of like loops and stuff. And you can build these like complex things, but it also handles something called dynamic visibility. So if you turn on dynamic visibility in the advanced tab, it means that you could have it where this is only visible, like you can either do this is not visible or this is visible when the user's role is X. And then you can make it, you can have multiple. So you could make it like an or statement. So it's like, are they this? Are they this? Like, are they an admin? Are they an editor? Or you can make your own custom roles. So I had it
Hmm.
where there was three brands, and if you were assigned all three brands, you got to see all three forms for those brands. If you're only assigned
Hmm.
one brand, you would only see one of those brands when you logged in. And so this way you
Hmm.
could like dynamically kind of change it out. And so people only saw the content that was relevant to that user. So really cool use versatility, especially if you're looking at something because I just went through pretty much every support portal platform, like from Zendesk to Freshdesk to like there's Help Scout, all these ones. Having that kind of dynamic capability, none of them had that. It was I had to basically find a solution we built ourselves, and it was all out of the box. There was no custom coding.
I think if I'm if I remember, there's a membership plugin called Sure Member,
Yeah,
which is quite flexible.
yeah. I mean, I was just looking for something that I already used Ultimate Member before in a previous like an LMS thing, but this for
Hmm.
the client where they had their own dealers and clients needing to log in and submit specific forms. Um, Oh, I'd also say a quick shout out on that as well. So form plugins as well. So some of them you could use out of the box, but I just going to do a quick shout out for Gravity Forms as being actually pretty good with their pro tier of being able to do cool things of routing. So the client that had that portal website also uses Gravity Forms for that website, so
Hmm.
that if a person submits it and they check off a certain thing, that gets routed to support or sales or marketing, and so they could route off these different emails based on how the form was filled out. So really versatile for getting, saving a lot of time of like one person receives all the emails and has to sort them out. It's like no, they automatically just go to who needs to fill them out.
Yeah, there's a lot of form plugins.
Oh yeah,
I do have that category that obviously we're getting to now. I thought we would have a little bit more time to get through
yeah,
some of these categories because I have like two or three other categories I was going to mention some stuff, but we're already out of time. I'll just finish off by mentioning a couple more of the form options that are quite common over Gravity.
yeah.
Ninja Forms, Contact Form 7. is,
Contact
I mean,
47.
I
Yep.
hate it, but it's
It's
very widely used.
it's versatile. I
Uh,
think that's its component, is that it's versatile in that it was a simple form and then other people could build add-ons that actually extended it and so it could do
yeah,
more things. I
yeah.
think a lot of the other
WP
form.
Forms is very popular,
Yep.
Fluent Forms, and there's something called Sure Forms. But I mean, just pick the one that is easiest to use and the most widely used, and you probably can't go wrong.
Well,
Unless you're looking for very specific functionality and you
yeah.
need to be able to interact and customize what you're doing for sure.
Yeah, especially that after form submission. That's where I would say if you're going to look at forms, that if you have specific requirements of when the form gets submitted, I need these things to happen. Like a certain
Hmm.
person gets it, or like just plot that out because it'll save you a lot of headache in the future.
And talking about forms, I want to segue just quickly before we wrap up in one last very important item to install on every WordPress site because WP or PHP,
WP
mail.php,
mail.
whatever the default
Yeah.
mailer is for WordPress is unreliable. So it's highly suggested you set up your own SMTP mail plugin and plug in and use your own SMTP server. And you can do that with WP Mail SMTP. You can do it with Fluent SMTP, and there's also another one called Solid Mail SMTP. Those would be the three most common that you can do that with to ensure that emails are being sent out from your site. Because
Yeah.
I see that all the time.
Yeah, I right now we have that, and we also have database entry. So on form submission, that makes a database row entry. So no matter what, because it doesn't have to rely on any sort of SMTP routing. So if
Mhm.
anything breaks, because SMTP is so unreliable, like if it doesn't fire, then it doesn't fire. But at least you have a backup. That it's like, oh hey, I didn't receive the email. Okay, we can go fix that. But at least I've got this database entry. So a lot of plugins offer that as well.
But this is even not just so the form gets sent, but so you can, recover passwords or you can get email notifications from your security or backup plugin. There's so many other emails that would get sent out from your site for notifications and things, and like we've said, the default mailer for WordPress is unreliable. So setting up your own SMTP plugin to do that will greatly um, pull up the deliverability of mail being sent out from your website.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, I was saying, yeah, what I was saying was just in addition to what you were saying as well. It's not like a
Oh,
replacement too. Yeah, I wasn't. No, it was in addition, just as like a even more backup. It's kind of the mode I'm thinking.
yeah.
Uh, all right. So I'm gonna let's leave it here, and then I think what is it we are doing next week is gonna be
Next week is May 15th, and it's going to be you and Rena doing a topic do epic long form blogs still reign in 2025?
yeah, so that should be a lot of fun. Talking about long form content. And so look forward to seeing you guys all next week. Bye for now.